It's noon over there in you're in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's exactly 12:11. So
Oh,
uh,
cool.
kind of works
So
works better for me than your end. Thanks for
yeah,
doing this, man. I appreciate it.
no, I'm the one who's I'm thanking you. So, Risto, why don't you introduce yourself to my viewers, if you don't mind?
Perfect. So my name is Hristo VITCHEV. I was born in Bulgaria, Sofia, and when I was about 6, 7 years old, my family moved to South America. My parents got transferred because of their job there. It was supposed to be a 1 year contract. They're engineers, and that 1 year became about 11 years. So I pretty
Okay.
much grew up in Caracas, in Venezuela.
Oh, wow.
And then about 1996, August 1996, the company they were working for got bought out by an American corporation here from Silicon Valley. And so that was the move, from one day to the other, basically. The American company bought the Venezuelan company and then consolidated everything here in the States. So without any planning, when I was in high school, 16 years old, we got to move to the States. So pretty much I've been here ever since, kind of nothing planned, but I was a rock. I mean, I got into guitar as any teenager, rock, 80s metal bands and things like that, and that was my vocation for a while. And kind of my knowledge of jazz was that it was a style of music, but other than that, I mean, I had heard like the name Charlie Parker. I knew was an important figure in that world, but being a metalhead, I went all the way down to the heaviest of realms from the death metal
Okay.
grounds and kind of, I used to check out every possible source of information, magazines and webzines when they used to back in the days. And kind of little by little, when you start reading interviews with all these players, you start connecting the dots. Well, this guy listened to like Steve Vai, for example, and
Hmm.
Steve. Then, oh, who's Steve Vai? And they start checking out music, and then Steve Vai listened to Pat Metheny, and then kind of connecting some dots, and kind of little by little over the years, from the kind of heaviest of metal stuff, started to get more into progressive music and more of instrumental guitar music, and kind of got to the progressive side of things, which had a bit of a kind of my biggest exposure to jazz would be Al Di Meola, kind of the
Mm.
electric but I was approaching it more from the shredders, kind of guitar inventional music perspective. Have no understanding of jazz music whatsoever, and then I wanted to go to school as a musician. I mean, I wanted to be a rock guitar player. And for some reason, when I was in South America, we used to get these catalogs from Berkeley College of Music. They would mail them to you, fancy photos and stuff, and then they would list all the people who went to Berkeley. And most of the stuff they used for advertisement was all the famous rock players, so like John
Mhm.
Petrucci and Steve Vai.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, my perception of Berkeley was this is a school to become a rock star, kind of stuff. So I want to go there. So I started recording out of high school scholarship kind of applications, recording little tapes and things. But at that level, my knowledge of music, even though I practice my ass off, every day, but I had no idea of the music language. I couldn't spell a major chord to save my life, or
Okay.
everything was mimicking, playing tablature, and spending 10 hours a day learning a Steve Vai solo like a Paganini Caprice, but without little, like even the smallest bit of understanding as to exactly what I was playing. And so, I mean, my technique was pretty good back then. And it won me a little scholarship to go to Berkeley, and I decided to try it for a winter semester. And that was a life-shattering moment. Like my my ego collapsed pretty much to the ground because I ended up in a jazz improvisation class, like a little combo, super beginner, just playing blues, and I couldn't play a single chord. Like, the teacher would be like, "Okay, let's play an F blues," and I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" Like, it's like playing an F7. I'm like, "What is an F7?" Like, of like a power chord or something. The guy was like, "Man, how did you end up here?"
So
And
how long did you go to Berkeley for?
man, I didn't last more than 2 weeks. I had a completely emotional crisis because there was, I mean, obviously they had given me this opportunity because my audition tape was just, I had recorded one of the Paganini Caprices on electric guitar. I mean, it
Okay.
was pretty impressive technically, but maybe they thought if this guy can play this stuff, he probably must know an F7 chord. They were pretty wrong. So, like, I mean, the teacher told me, man, I mean, I cannot have you in the class because obviously, as a guitar player, you have to comp. And we're gonna play some standards, we're gonna play things, but like, you don't even know a single dominant chord. I mean, I mean, it's not gonna work out. There's other guitar players who can fit. So, man, it's when I kind of started, you know, thinking, well, how much it would take for me to catch up to these kids. They were like out of high school little kids from all over the states,
Okay.
and they didn't have much technique. Man, they can play melody, they can improvise. And I was like, man, like all my life, all the stuff I've spent, it's useless here. Like I cannot apply one bit of this. And I really had a kind of completely life-shattering moment. And I called my parents. I'm like, I want to go home. This sucks. I can never. So I quit. I mean, I got back home here to the Bay Area where we live, and decided that I don't have what it takes to do music. So for 2 years, I pretty much didn't touch a guitar. I kind of went through. My parents told me, being engineers, they're like, you have to get an education. I can care less, but you're gonna go to college. So first, I tried working at guitar stores, selling guitars, Guitar Center, things like that, just to kind of, regroup and decide what to do with my life. And then little by little, my parents were like, you have to go to school. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna sign up for, the local college, starting to take all the general education classes here in the States. The education is very different, but you have to like take a bunch of general classes and stuff. So, and I'll figure it out. It would take me 1-2 years to take those, and then I'll figure out what I want to do. I thought I'm going to go into graphic design or something like that, And in the meantime, I had a few of my friends who were still metalheads from high school. They kind of started to discover jazz, and they would like go to all these shows. So by complete accident, one of my dear friends was like, man, I have an extra ticket to a show, a jazz concert. Would you mind coming with me? We'll hang out, catch up. And at that moment, I was like, man, jazz, I don't know. That's like old people's music kind of stuff, But then I'm like, what do I have to lose? I'll have a drink with my friend, we'll catch up and whatever. And that was the life-changing moment. Like 2 years later, after quitting, it was Wallace Rooney, famous trumpet player that unfortunately passed away during COVID. But it was his quintet with his brother on trombone, and this is honestly the first time, Miko, in my life I've heard music. I thought like I was seeing color for the first time. Like my idea of tonal spectrum was like 7-string distorted guitars and double bass drums and the craziest uptime signature lick you can take. That was like the color you had to play, And maybe once in a while like a slightly less distorted guitar, but then hit again. That was like, and suddenly I heard a drummer play with brushes. I never even thought that was a thing. Like, what is this thing making this sound? And then upright bass, like wow. And then like obviously Wallace and then his brother, having trumpet and trombone. Man, they had all kinds of mutes, Harmon mutes and whatever mutes, and so just even the trumpet. I thought I knew how a trumpet sounded, but like hearing the trumpet with a Harmon mute and with all the different things, like man, and then acoustic piano, keyboard. I was either like my life literally was like taking a big swirl as they were playing, and I had no idea what was happening on stage. I mean, I knew it was improvised, but one thing that intrigued me completely was that after what I thought of myself as playing music for like since I was 12 until 20, like for 8 years straight every day, practicing hard and thinking of myself a musician, I had no knowledge, not even a single cell that can connect me to what was happening on stage. Like it was beautiful. It just got me through my senses, but I had no idea. Like I couldn't explain to myself how is this possible. And that evening, I remember we were driving home. I was like, man, I don't care about being a musician. I just want to understand what happened then. Like what was happening, like what were they thinking,
So how old were you at this point?
That was exactly 2020, 2000, year 2000 exactly.
Okay.
2000. And so right away, I started looking the very next few days. I'm like, man, the same community college I was going to, taking my general education classes. I'm like, let me see if they have a class on like jazz or something related to jazz. And they had like the most average listening to jazz one-on-one.
Okay.
Like,
So this is in San Francisco?
Yeah, this was in San Jose. So basically the southern part of the Bay.
Okay.
And so I signed up for that class for the very next quarter, which was about 1 month away from that period. And I was anxiously waiting that month, man, to learn about this thing, And it was a class for non-musicians. It's a general education for like people who just have to commit like a credit. Basically, there's no playing; you're just listening. They take you to the history of jazz, giving an example what to listen for. This is the elements, and you have to go to live shows, to the concert reports, as homework, that kind of stuff. And man, literally within the first 2 weeks, I started feeling that emotion of playing again. Kind of like, man, maybe. Like this is something cool. Like there's no like obviously at the very beginning they start with Louis and Dixieland. It's like it was, at least to my music career, it was like something I can see myself. Like it doesn't require like Steve Vai type chops to play stuff. And I was like, beautiful melodies. And I'm like, man, maybe I can actually learn this thing. And then, but then at that level, I was like, I have no aspirations of ever being competitive in this. So I don't even want to think about going to a famous school and making connections. I'm going to go to the closest, cheapest possible school just to learn it for my own sake. And then
Yeah.
I'll figure something else to do in life. That was my thing. And man, that started creeping little. By the time we finished the quarter in that class, which pretty much takes you to modern day, at that level, the course pretty much finished with stuff like the electric bands of Miles Davis and Herbie and some of the early Pat Metheny kind of stuff, Scofield. That was like until that was like considered the current state. Um, Man, I was like, I can see the connection now. There's electric instruments. There's like some distortions also a part of the thing, and that was like the bug that got me. Man, I want to go and sign up. And so then I switched to a full music university here in the area, and I
Okay.
went and I want to audition for getting into the jazz program, and that was kind of
Which university is this?
this is actually a local university called San Jose State University. It's a Bay Area, Silicon Valley type.
Yeah, because I'm not familiar with the schools up there.
Yeah, and so I mean, this was a very small. It's not known. It's known for engineering, obviously here being in Silicon Valley and all the high
Right.
tech.
Yeah.
It's known for all the engineering schools and stuff. But they had a music college, music school, and the jazz program was super small, which a blessing in disguise. Many years later, I understood the impact of being a small program because the entire jazz program was literally like 30 people.
Okay.
And I was
Wow.
one of the only three guitar players in the program. So basically, you had to play in all the ensembles.
That's
And
great.
that was great because when I went to Berkeley for my placement that year, I went to Berkeley was 1999. I was one of 1,400 guitar players, and obviously I was the weakest link of probably the entire program. So Berkeley had about 40 combos. They had at that time 40, maybe they've expanded. I don't know. They had like 12 big bands and 40 combos.
Yeah.
Even if they take two guitar players per class, man, there's
Yeah.
another 1,000 guitar players who have to wait and do something else, and they would never play in an ensemble for their first 2 years. So like that
Yeah.
experience of like playing and then writing for the ensemble and stuff.
Hmm.
Whereas at the school I went to, there was no demand for music, obviously. So it's like, oh, you three guitar players, you guys are signed up automatically, whether you like it or not. You have to play in Latin, in big band, in combo, in whatever. And then also when I got into writing, it was beautiful because I could write for every ensemble. Like there was nobody else who was writing, so I can just okay, let's play my tunes, and that was very very essential. Like I talked to some of my colleagues who went to Berkeley, and their experience. I mean, unless you were at the number like top 1%,
Right.
you
Yeah.
got placed everywhere. Man, your experience, you never got to study with the famous teachers because you were
Yeah.
always studying with it. Which again, the networking you get in a big school, it's amazing. I
Yeah.
don't take it for granted. But like a player like me, who was the weakest possible link, I think I got much more out of a smaller program than I would have.
But I mean, you're still in a very large urban area, which
Oh
is
yeah, exactly. Like
known for music, right? Like it's like, isn't that where Tower of Power comes from, that
yeah,
area?
exactly. I mean, all the Auckland, which is basically the Bay Area, is like a big U-shaped city. So here in the States, it's kind of weird. Where like what I consider in Europe neighborhoods, they call them cities here. So it's a never-ending populated area. But like from district to district, it's called San Jose, and then from here to here, it's San Francisco, and then Auckland, Berkeley, San Mateo, whatever. They have a lot of. But it's the equivalent of one major metropolitan area. So Auckland is the top part of the U. San Francisco is the other part. There's a bridge connecting them, and then San Jose is the bottom part of the U. Kind of stuff. So yeah, there was a lot of access to go see music. There was a
Yeah.
lot of amazing places to see, jazz, world class jazz, like pretty much every night of the week. So that was great. Like from the inspirational standpoint of like, man, every day after school we can go see, Pat Martino or Cedar Walton or Phil Woods and whoever. But the one thing comparing to the big schools is that definitely after I graduated, my network of players who I knew who are now stepping into the business and might be on tour and getting some connections was very small, and they were all from the same area. So technically, I didn't have much of a wider net. Whereas some of my friends who went to Berkeley, they went to school with people from every country
Yeah.
that finally got back to their countries and started doing projects. So then they call each other for things, and suddenly your network is like you're expanded in pretty
Yeah.
much a global sense. Which I definitely think that's a very important thing too on the business side of things. But if you just extract the learning for a player who didn't know what they needed. I mean, I didn't even know what questions to ask, right? So I needed like full on support me here. I think a smaller institution ended up being a better thing from the learning experience.
And now you're like playing there locally, and you're playing. Are you touring as well with?
Yeah, funny, when I finished school, so I got halfway to the program, I kind of knew this is what I want to do in life. And I'm going to spend and do my best to be competitive and be able to do it as a profession. So I kind of decided, okay, my ego got shattered. I know how that feels. I've rebuilt. Now I'm going to approach it this way. I'm going to work harder. I know how much it takes to do this. And so kind of halfway to those 4 years, I went to school. I was like, okay, I'm going to do everything. But at the same time, I got super inspired into writing music. There was a lot of opportunity to arrange and write music because of the small size of the program. And when you do it often enough, you kind of get to, pretty much clear all the quirks of the game. Like you get, this voicing for the horns didn't work out. On paper looks good, but I heard it on the guitar sounds good, but when the horns play live, it's like, that interval doesn't work, right? So doing that every week with the ensembles, I was like, man, I really want to write music and record my own thing. So straight out of college, I graduated late 2006. Basically, I already had a body of work I had written for school, but it was mainly for like horn-based ensembles, with like a few horns and kind of more of a school, smaller, big band type things. And my sensibility in music was closer to kind of the ECM, more of the chamber, smaller group, piano, guitar, bass, drums kind of stuff, or vibraphone. And so I was like, I'm going to start writing new stuff. All the body work I wrote for school, that was a kind of formative training type sketches. But so very soon, like that first year, I wrote a lot of music. And then little by little started, some of my colleagues who had graduated or had moved from the area, meeting a jam session. We started making little groups to kind of read original music just for fun. People would bring their charts. And through that kind of jam session hangout things, started selecting musicians to finally form my own group. And like in 2009, I recorded my first quartet record. And then I got super excited to like, oh man, I get to play my own music and be able to like show this to some festivals or some clubs to get booked as because until then we all play gigs at restaurants or coffee shops. So we call them casuals. I mean, that's how we make ends meet. And in this area, one of the lucky and unlucky things is there's a lot of corporate type work because all of the high-tech companies in the world are here, and all of them have all kinds of dinners and events, product launches, meetings, and jazz being the formal, elegant music for in there by the business etiquette. So, but I mean, obviously in the background with
the wallpaper music, yes.
Exactly. And they're always, just turn down, but it's beautiful. Nobody.
I don't mind doing those gigs. I like doing gigs like that. Some people.
To me, those are my favorite ones to practice. Like usually when I know the situation is like that, as long as your demeanor and your smile, man, you can get away with playing Ornette Coleman on those. Nobody would. So the one thing is we used, I was playing a lot. All the musicians were doing all these casuals, all throughout the week. But getting to play artistically was a different thing. You needed to have a product, you needed to have something, a branding and an image, and all the clubs in the area, which were, the aspiration of all the newcomer musicians in jazz were like, oh, I want to get a gig there. But, to get a gig there, well, you had to have original music and you had to have this. And so finally, after recording an album, that was my thing. It's like, oh, finally got a gig at a big place and try to get all your friends to show up and your family. And anyways, that entire experience, somehow I ended up liking the social aspect of it, like talking to people, going and meeting a promoter or like explaining to them my vision and why I think this is going to be a successful show, not only on the musical side, but also on the business side and things like that. And which a lot of musicians don't like doing in general. So my colleagues say, I don't want to deal. I just want to play. Like, don't get me involved. But I don't know. Somehow the social thing, I just grew up to like so much. And I had such a fun time promoting, like connecting, writing emails and answering. I would go to a coffee shop, put some music and try to, get the context of all these journalists and write them a letter and explain my story and send them links. And then when they answer, kind of getting a conversation. So I started doing that a little by little, kind of over the course of a few years. By about 2010, 11, I was really able to put some touring together with that.
So how many albums have you made at this point?
So at this point, my last record was released just before the pandemic, 2018, and that was my 9th record.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I have about 4 or 5 quartet records. That was my main
Yeah.
working group before the pandemic hit. And then I have a duo project, which I have 3 records with just a piano player, guitar and piano. And then I have another group, a fusion, electric jazz fusion group that I help co-lead. So I co-write the music with one of the other players, and we
Okay.
release it both together. So we have 2 records with that. But the entire formula, I was kind of lucky that back in 2007, when I was still in school, I just knew an international student here that was part of this music project from Japan. And she was a vocalist, a jazz vocalist that had come here to study music in the States. And so she had some connections in Japan, and she organized a tour in Japan. And she ended up hiring her friends here from the school program as a rhythm section to kind of, coming back and bringing an American rhythm section. It was kind of
Yeah.
a cool thing for her to sell. And that was my very first musical trip outside of the United States,
Okay.
and it was in the best music place in the world, which is, I mean, Japan is the greatest music market in the
Yeah.
universe,
Yeah.
and especially for jazz music. It's just completely insane. And I mean, just seeing the appreciation and reception
Hmm.
of the Japanese audience to this, it was completely like 1,000 years ahead of the United States in terms of like how much they were into it, how much they were willing to support and get involved in this stuff by even buying CDs and coming to the shows. And I mean, it was like whatever I thought was difficult to promote here, over there just mention something online. There's a concert and it's boom, it's kind of half the
Wow.
tickets are
Wow.
sold.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you would say,
I've heard people say that, but I've never been to that part of the world. So, but
yeah, it was great. I mean, definitely has changed lately. Obviously, the global music system, it's inescapable. I mean, the commodization of music and kind of its devaluation, it's even there cannot escape. But still to this day, I mean, they have CD stores, like they have Tower Records there, which are like,
oh,
the
really?
one in downtown Tokyo is like 10 floors high. Each floor it's a different style, and like they have one entire floor for ECM jazz. It's
Really?
crazy.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And the average, even to this day, the average Japanese buys about 72 CDs per year. So I mean, if you think they're a nation of 100 and something million, 120 something, 150 million, and the average buys 72, but the ones who are into music, they're contributing
Yeah.
hundreds of CDs. And so, in regards, I mean, that experience, it was like a 1 week thing, and I was like, I remember coming back from that. I'm like, if I ever can have the opportunity to produce a tour and kind of get the music out, it has to be Japan. I don't care about any other country in the world. Because that when I went on that tour, I was a student. I didn't have any products, nothing, but just seeing the
Okay.
reception. So then, pretty much my formula became Miko afterwards. I really spent every, pretty much last drop of energy I had and time and finance to be able to get my music and promote it in Japan. And so my formula eventually by my third record was you record a record, do a promotion in the US, radio, magazines. At that time, there were still, people would go to the bookstore. There were bookstores back then. They would go and then buy like a Downbeat or Jazz Times or Jazzies and Jazzwise from Europe used to come in the British magazine. And
Yeah.
so, anyways, and there was reviews and people used to read them because that's the only way you knew what to go buy at the store. There was no way to stream things and check out. But anyway, long story short, I finally got contacts in Japan that would produce after the promotion in the US. I would do nice PR packages and then try to expose them to the Japanese context. But this is my record. It's doing so. This and this in the States. It's in the charts. It's getting played in radio. We're coming on tour there, and trying to get bookings. I mean, even I remember hiring local friends who were not musicians but spoke Japanese to sit with me and be on the phone because at that time, Japanese were very old-fashioned. Email and stuff like that, not at all. You had to call them or fax. They needed to have something in print, something like
Really?
that.
Okay.
Everything's
Wow.
getting pushed. Like this digital stuff, not even to this day, they're very old-fashioned.
Yeah, yeah, it goes against the stereotype, right? Like we assume that they are ahead of everything but not
It's crazy
necessarily.
if you think like even like to this, the Japanese websites are stuck in HTML 1996.
Yeah,
I mean, that's even the most modern things, and their communication. I mean, in terms of technology, they're absolutely amazing. But the human interaction, it's literally still as it was like last century, in a way.
interesting.
So, anyways, long story short, my entire formula was produce a record here, try to play as many casual gigs as you can and teach so I can finance the record, first of all. then get the record, promote it here, try to maybe play a few festivals and clubs in the States, in the regular area to kind of get exposure with the record, see the release concerts, and then try to organize a Japan tour, take the band there, do a tour, then come back. And this is where we used to sell CDs. I mean, in Japan, you can sell hundreds of CDs. Like in the United States, you would sell like 10 CDs maximum.
Yeah.
But the gig there, we had to ship them in boxes way in advance.
But did you use backline over there, or just did you just
Yeah,
how
so,
did
so the one thing about Japan is that all the clubs have
they
the
have?
most state-of-the-art backline. I mean, like
Okay,
the greatest
so you
pianos
just bring
out.
your guitar basically,
Yeah,
and
so basically guitar. And once in a while, we had to rent an upright bass.
yeah,
Maybe some of the venues didn't have an upright bass, but all the venues have absolutely amazing Yamaha pianos, and I mean, all the amplifiers are great. I mean, in terms of equipment, top notch
wow,
in that. So that kind of was the formula, and then little by little we started making connections in France, and then I started doing even master classes. I would go between the band tours. I would just go by myself, and like I had already friends who I met. I had students there who would take a lesson when I go. I would do little presentations in little jazz clubs and things like that, or like guitar stores. And then finally made friends that are still friends to this day, and then they had connections, and little by little that grew up from Japan to kind of more of an Asia in general. We'll go to China, we'll go to Korea, we'll go to Hong Kong, we'll go to Singapore. So it kind of started expanding, and then with the connections that I had made, I was able to then also bring all sorts of other projects. So maybe I didn't have a record with my own group this year, but I was part of another as a sideman into a project, and they wanted to go to maybe the leader had some ways to finance and start the operation, and then we use my contacts to organize that. So at some point I was going there very often, about
oh
three
wow,
to four times a year, and then the pandemic happened. So
right, so
when the pandemic happened, it's just obviously that part of the world being the epicenter. I mean, everything got closed, and even
yeah,
Japan recently, like literally within the last year, finally reopened to
yeah, yeah.
foreigners. It's very hard to even after the pandemic had completely subsided everywhere in the world, they were not letting any foreigners kind of come in. Like it was very restricted unless
So
you.
when did you start your because we need to talk about your website,
Yeah,
your
yeah.
bookstore.
So that was the reason. I never thought. I mean, I love teaching. Teaching has been one of my passions. Just talking about music and kind of researching. I call it little research. Like even from my school days, my teachers would be like, okay, so we have to learn these standards, memorize. But man, I never work on tunes. I couldn't. The moment I picked up the guitar, I'm like, okay, what is another way to play like G major 7? I know this one, but how about maybe this one? How about if I play G major here? Oh, I can get the F sharp. Man, I was a nerd. Like honestly, okay, I would learn the song, and then I started like, oh, the first chord is G major. I need a new voice. And I will spend like 3 hours, like trying to figure out things, and then I'll be tired. I'm like, I'll get to the song tomorrow. So I knew all these things, but man, I couldn't play a star. I didn't know a single standard, because I spent all my time. So that was my biggest passion, is like to look at the inner workings and the mechanics of things. That even to this day, I have much more fun doing that than actually learning a tune or something. But so I always loved teaching, and that was my thing. And I had a lot of private things, but I never had anything codified in notes or handouts. The lesson would be just, let's talk and check this out, and we'll go in these deep dives for things. But then it was up to the students to kind of live and take some notes, because I mean, I can talk, as you can tell, I like talking. So then when the pandemic hit, pretty much all my gigs, literally for the next 2 years, that were scheduled. Some of those festivals they book way in advance. So we already had
Mhm.
visibility in Asia for until like 2021, by the end of 2019. And literally, I got all the emails and phone calls within 1 or 2 weeks. Everything is canceled, canceled, canceled. And then I looked at my calendar. I was like, man, I don't have not a single gig. Like everything was empty. The Google thing was, and nothing local either, because all the hotels and you were playing in little restaurants. Like, okay, we don't know until further notice. Everything canceled. And I told Nico that this is gonna be like, man, we're gonna figure it out. We're a smart society. This is gonna be maximum 2 months. Everybody's gonna shelter. We're gonna kill this thing. Man, was I wrong? Especially in the States, man. The American view of this was what a disaster. Anyway, so the first few weeks, I'm like, I'm just gonna take a vacation. I'm gonna sit down and play for myself and work on things I needed to work. And then by week 3, I'm like, man, this is not looking good. This, like, I need to figure out something to do. And then, like, I cannot do anything. So I'm gonna finally sit down and do what I wanted to do the last 10 years, is codifying my notes into PDF handouts so that when we start teaching again, at least I can, hey guys, I finally finished my part of the job. Here, so you guys can have clean PDFs with other examples. And that was my entire idea when I started the business. Like, it was for my own personal use so that at least I can use the time for something productive. I needed to do that anyways. And then little by little, like, I would send it to my students and then they would comment, oh, those are pretty nice, man. And what a change from like no notes to like a nice PDF with them. And so after a few comments, I'm like, well, everybody was online back then.
Yeah.
I decided to just be brave and say, well, how about if I just put a Facebook post, like I have all these notes from my lessons. Does anybody want to get it for like $2 or $3 or like a little PDF? And that's how the thing started. Like, I think it was definitely, it was a silver lining is that everybody, at least in the States, was forced to be in front of a computer for the first 6-7 months. And it was like, there was nothing you can do. Everything has to be on. And so like, you know, if you're like an engineer who has a hobby, guitar is a hobby, and you're in the area, you're from somewhere else, let's say from Europe, you cannot go back, you're stuck here, you don't have too many friends, and the only kind of relaxation you can do is practice your hobby online. I mean, things like that are easier to spend money on, I think. So then it suddenly picked up, and I saw this very healthy demand and interest, genuine interest of people, like, oh, this is useful to me. And then that kind of got me inspired more. Let me do it then much better. Let me shoot some video with this, because some of these things are very hard to explain on paper. It's much more confusing, right? So let me explain, and then let me do like some media, maybe a backing track and things. So it was kind of a gradual thing, little by little, to the point where 1.5 years down the road, which we were still in a kind of a closed down situation here. There was nothing happening. All the theaters and public gatherings were completely off the grid.
I have to say that it's very impressive, that stuff. I can't remember when I first saw that stuff, but I have bought a few of your stuff. I have like here, for example, I have the intervallic. I think the first one I bought was your Pat Metheny, the Metheny-isms.
Oh yeah, that's
I mean that stuff.
That kind of stuff, you know.
I've never seen anybody come up with a system for that. I thought it was always kind of very.
Well, you know, for me it was always. I mean, I have to say, when I get into music, and even to this day, I mean, I'm the first one who raises my hand. I mean, I really think I have absolutely no talent, natural thing to do this. Like, I mean, because I know people who just naturally they're music, you know. Man, I have to say, for me, Miko, it's it doesn't matter what something new I learn. It's always so non-natural. Like, I mean, just like, how do I conceive a line? Because I would take all these lessons for people like, oh, check this out. So this is the thing. Just feel it, you know. I'm like, man, I cannot feel a single thing. Like, obviously my grandparents are mathematicians. My parents are engineers. So like all my life.
My dad is a mathematician too.
Yeah, so like when I was little, after school, the grandparents were retired. So, oh, when I come, we're gonna help you with homework. Because man, all the kids are playing soccer outside, and I'm like doing math problems. It's like I hated it, but I think it got ingrained into like analytical. Like there's no creative, ambiguous, subjective. Everything is objective, and if I cannot explain it objectively, I just don't get it. I don't feel it.
Yeah.
And so for me, every time I took a lesson I remember like taking a few lessons from Pat Martino and from some great players over the years that I had coming through town. Man, nothing from the lesson, zero. Like, I mean, only inspiration. Like I was in the same presence and thing, but like not a single thing that I can actually usefully take and use. There was no connection. So then I had to sit down and figure out, okay, this is the sound. How can I, like, if Martini does, like, if there's something like that, I mean, it sounds beautiful. It's an organic kind of expression, but to me, I needed to have, like, this is a 2 intervals of a scale. In between them, he feels the missing notes. So then I can say, okay, that's a sound. I see the mechanics of a sound, but now they're completely, there's nothing ambiguous. It's 2 notes, and then in between the 2 notes, you're feeling the chromatic descending notes. And sometimes if you have a minor third interval, there's only 2 frets you can do that. But if you have a major third, you have 3 frets. So you have to decide, what would I do it between this or 2 different sounds? But again, at least the idea is the same. And then that can lead to a more analytical thing of, well, if I can visualize 2 intervals, and I can visualize 2 intervals in a scale, like an A major scale, but just play only the 2 intervals on each string, I can then I can try to create something that sounds like, I mean, I'm pretty sure Martini doesn't think like that. Although,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, no,
we
yeah.
think it's organic. But to me, like that kind of digging in and nerding out
Breaking
on
it
music
down, yeah.
and stuff. And so anyway, so that kind of everything started literally as a need to do something just because I had the time for the first time. Because you know how it is otherwise. I'm gonna sit this weekend, and then you get a call for a casual, but you have to learn 5 tunes because I want to do. Okay, cool. Then okay, well I have to learn the songs first. So maybe you get a call for a recording session, or maybe a wedding gig, and you have to learn all this top 40 stuff. And then the time goes. I always like had plans to do it, but man, real life just intervenes. And that was a journey. And then finally by year one, like at the end of that, I saw there was enough demand, and people were writing with these very kind notes, like, "Oh man, this really helped me do that," and that's kind of inspiring. Somebody caring about what you do,
Yeah.
because before was like the casual stuff or some of my lessons. I mean, I do teach a lot of, you used to before, a lot of kids in the area, and those are situations where the kids are amazing. They want to tell you all about what happened at school and things like that, but their parents have this idea that they want to do music, and it's not like they don't want to, but that's not their main interest. So it's
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
those relationships where like, man, I'm gonna try to use our time to the best of our relationship. So I don't want to bore you to death with stuff that I know you don't want to learn, but at the same time, your parents want you to do this, so we have to be here. So let's make it fun. So you try to do something with them, but knowing that there's no growth. I mean, this is the guitar gets closed, and then the next week we meet. I open the guitar and exactly how I left the page with the
Yeah,
notes, and even from the eraser, the little
yeah,
things
we
you get
we've
left.
we've all been there, yeah.
And so like, and so after a few years, man, that at least emotionally gets you because like you're like, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Like I'm just preaching to the wall. Nothing would happen. You kind of know it. And so for the first time, getting notes back, people are like, oh man, this is cool. I really enjoyed it. Do you have
But
more?
it's very well produced, like the way you explain things. So it comes, your package comes with a PDF and a video and backing tracks and everything.
Yeah,
Is I
usually
was very
most of
impressed
them. Yeah.
that it's so well put together, and the way you explain the quality of the video and the quality of the audio, everything is, and it's
Oh, thank you, Joe.
it's stuff that you, because everybody's trying to do this now, right? Sell
Yeah,
something,
exactly. No, I mean, we
but
have to as
your
musicians.
stuff, that's different. Like I haven't seen that kind of
Well,
for,
thanks. I have to say, it's a learning experience every day. I mean, I definitely didn't. Up until that moment, literally, I was the most old school guy. Man, I would in the house. I have an acoustic piano, my guitar, pencil, and paper. So anything I write, like I would try to share with my bandmates. Like, okay, here's a new chart, man. Oh, not paper, not even finale, just
Mhm.
handwritten. Then photograph with a phone. And then here's the parts. I'll just play some things on the guitar to share them some files. I have, at that moment, everybody had a recording set up in the house, whatever it is, like little
Mhm.
interface, MIDI, some software. Everybody did. I was the only guy in my circles. Like, man, this guy doesn't even cannot even share us a file, like or something to work. And I that world for me was foreign because every time I record something, we'll go to the studio and thing. And so through this thing, though, I had to learn. I had to like, okay, well,
Yeah,
I need to get an interface. I need to be able to record things because people like to.
same for me. Yeah,
And so then it was like a learning, and then came the video. I was shooting with the phone, but then I was like, man, if people are gonna pay money for this, I have to give them the best that I can produce. I mean, I kind of felt like weird, like so like, oh, let's get a camera. So how to shoot with a camera, lighting, stuff like that, and even to this day, man, with every new little study I do, is like I found maybe there's a better way to instead of having the video too long, let's break into two videos. Maybe a video of just showing the stuff, and then another video of just impersonal kind of talking where they can just sit down and listen and then go watch the other video and kind of make sense. Or so I mean, it's completely a work in progress and kind of
and
learning. And then I see other people do stuff. It's like, oh man, these guys that product they have a cool thing. I want to actually do something similar. So learning by observing other people do like different things too.
and is the artwork yours as well? Like,
Yes. So basically, what I started doing initially, I'm actually remember I told you when I kind of quit playing, I thought I'm
yeah,
gonna go into graphic design, and during that time, since I was little, I actually liked painting. But my grandparents, I remember when I got into music, they're like, "Man, it seems like you have a natural talent for painting. Why don't you go into painting? It's still artistic and stuff." Like, nah, I want to be a rock player. And so I never developed it. I mean, I definitely think that if I have any predisposition to do something slightly easier, it's actually drawing and painting, not music.
mhm.
But I never developed that. I never took formal classes. I think it's just completely just
Okay.
sketching. painting. And
But
so then,
I saw you're also selling like design, like
yes, so I still enjoy doing that. And if I have the time, a lot of times I do these little drawings with an uninterrupted line, and I try to draw musicians or things like
yeah,
that, and then I upload it
it's
to this
really cool.
website. The print by design things that you can do very easily now. And then I started my biggest thing of like combining music, and this was when I started recording music. I would paint every single cover of the record first. It was really like I would paint it was all, but it was like canvas, oil paints, like big stuff, you know. So I would first paint something, and then I would use the emotion from the painting to write the music for it. And
Oh,
people used to laugh. It's like, man, it's like every time I show somebody a painting, my bandmates were like, okay, that means we're going to be recording soon. There's a new record coming. So that kind of it become a branding over the years that like all my records are everything is all paints, and they're painted to the music. It kind of became people started dubbing me impressionistic jazz or whatever, you know, and some of the reviewers, and became a thing. So when I kind of like that was already, I was using it as a branding. All my flyers and posters used to look like oil paints with, you know, description. So when I started doing this, I was like, man, this is the only way I know how to promote. I mean, at least I can cross-pollinate this way. I mean, people already are expecting everything that comes from me to kind of have that vibe and that visual aspect. So that was actually the only reason I decided to first start to paint. And the very first publications that I published during the first months of COVID were actually painted with oil and all kinds of, then scanning. But then at some point it started to be too time consuming. Like I would work on a study that's like literally 12 measures, little melodic thing that I'm gonna sell for $1 or give away for free.
uh-huh.
And I would spend like 10 hours producing everything on the music and then spend 12 hours doing the paint. So I was like, man, this is not self-sustainable, you know? So lately what I've been doing, I really got into AI and doing a lot of combination of work. So I would actually paint, but instead of finishing the full painting, I would sketch, then
Hmm.
take a photograph of my sketch, and then start prompting the AI as to
Oh,
exactly what I
really?
want.
Oh, interesting.
And so this the one you were asking. This is I painted that like a sketch just of the lines, how I wanted to look more of a Picasso type thing. But then all the color and all the texture is applied by AI. It's not me.
Okay. Oh,
And
interesting.
so it speeds the process tremendously. So like I can get something, I can do a fast sketch within like 10, 15 minutes of exactly what I want as an idea, and then another minute or two maximum of prompting to get that. And finally, I have a high definition file ready to go, so I can spend more time working on the music. Because what happened in the meantime is I also became parent. I have two small girls,
Hmm.
and so like, when kids got into the mix, man, like the time just disappears as fast as melting ice, you know.
But how would you describe your like the music you have, the records you've produced and or your albums that you have made? How would you describe the music for somebody who's, or could
Yes, I
you?
mean, I definitely think that the parting point for me, it's definitely the ECM
Mm,
sensibility of the sound, at least. But it's definitely the departing point is kind of the Pat Metheny quartet type
hmm.
acoustic ensembles in terms of it's the same instrumentation, piano, guitar, bass, and drums. But the music, I definitely think it's very heavily influenced by impressionistic classical music, Debussy,
Okay.
Ravel. So there's a lot of very intricate inner voice movements, and the piano player that's been part of the quartet, it's a Brazilian pianist, and has that entire Egberto Gismonti school,
Oh,
and
yeah.
something that's very, even in a very simple progression, the density and the articulation and movement of the inner voice, it's very
So those
dense.
are local musicians. Because I saw a video with you and you were playing with this drummer, Colin
Stranahan. It
Stranahan.
was
Yeah,
Pat
I saw
Bianchi.
him play recently here with Jonathan Kreisberg. He was
Yeah. He played
unbelievable.
with Jonathan. And actually, very dear friends with Jonathan. We go back and forth
Okay.
time talking. But yeah, so I mean, this particular quartet, which unfortunately Miko hasn't worked, we haven't done anything. The last concert actually we had was 1.5 years ago at a big festival here
Okay.
in California. But before that, our last concerts were like a month before the lockdown happened. That was our last show.
Okay.
So the reason is that the musicians are all from the West Coast, but they're all spread out to a few different states. So the piano player lives in Portland, Oregon, which is a state above
Yeah, yeah.
California. I live in the Bay Area. One of the guys lives in Los Angeles now, which is down in Southern California, which is like a 2-hour flight, you know.
Yeah.
And so we used to get together before for, like, I would write the music, send the music out. Everybody would kind of learn and practice some little guitar recordings or piano recordings we had. And then before the recording session, usually my formula was I book the studio to record, and then 1 week before the studio, I book a rehearsal space. And everybody flies in for at least 3 days, and 3 full days of us actually playing the music together, kind of talking about, oh, let's change this here, this is nice. And kind of like all kind of putting the final polishes on the arrangements. And then 3 days of playing, going to the studio, 2 days of recording usually, all the records, and then everybody goes home. And then the next time we get together is when I book a gig to maybe promote the record and stuff. So that was kind of the formula. But, it really, at least, I don't know how it's in Europe, but it got pretty almost impossible to do it anymore after the pandemic, with all the inflation and pretty much all the expenses in organizing something like that. Literally, I mean, if I go back to 2019, which is the last time we did this, to now, are at least 3 times more expensive. So anything from renting a van, from renting a car, from so like all the expenses literally are almost 3 times as more expensive in terms of production cost.
I think it's a different over here because I don't think you would even do something like that with like far, like distance.
Yeah, probably. You probably will work with more local musicians. Yeah, but at least the payments, the performance fees that you can command as an independent artist in that circuit of like jazz clubs and festivals and things like that are literally exactly the same. They haven't even increased 1%. And so now, pretty much, we used to work with this overhead of about maybe a margin of 20%, if you're lucky, was the profit, like a very good situation. And now when everything's with 3x, it's just, I definitely think it's a transitional period for the value of music and how it's going to change to something else. And before, a lot of times, we would take these gigs, literally, that if you put the expenses against payment, man, you're paying to play, like literally. You actually have to spend more money to go and play than the money you're getting. But back in the days, if it's a big CD release concert or a tour, you would sell merchandise, you would sell CDs. And like, I remember one of the years I played the Monterey Jazz Festival, which was a part of the tour with the new record. I mean, we sold on just one performance, so like 200 CDs. And 200 on a $25 CD. Now that's a money that if you don't come up on the other side, you can divide. And that was not. Obviously, if you have a brand new CD, definitely more demands playing the radio. There's obviously, if you have an old CD, you might not do as well. But it wasn't out of this ordinary. I mean, it's happened to many musicians like that, And so at least you have this other source of income that you can kind of start to balance out. But now that is completely gone. There's no way in the States. There's absolutely no way to sell a CD. No, I mean zero.
No, I don't think there is. Not in Sweden. I don't know. I think in Germany and places like that, they still buy CDs, but here in Sweden, there are no.
The sad part is I judge from my own. Like, I'm a musician. I mean, I should be preaching this and supporting. And even when I think about myself, I'm very honest. I'm like, man, the last time I bought a record was.
I never buy records.
I mean, I subscribe to Spotify, I subscribe to Apple Music, I have all the subscriptions, and I listen to music, and everything comes out right away. But when I think about it, if I, as the guy who is suffering from this, if I'm not the one, what is left for the average listener who has absolutely no emotional involvement?
Well, I think people need to pay more for streaming.
Like the subscription, probably.
It's really
change.
The people that are complaining on Spotify are paying like what, $10 a month? Like that's ridiculous. $10 a month for every music in the whole world. It's not.
And it's the most, to me, incomprehensible thing, because in a way you can listen to the entire history of recorded music of human. Like, one lifetime would not be enough to listen to.
Hopefully they can come up with a system where people can support directly the artist they're listening to through that streaming platform or something like that.
I mean, I think if it's a way where like my subscription monthly gets only divided to exactly those 3 players I have listened to. Or so maybe if I see a certain amount of listens per artist. And
I just switched actually from Spotify to app or to YouTube Music, because
YouTube, yeah,
YouTube Music
it's
has
great too. Yeah.
so. But
I mainly use Apple Music because it's the entire ecosystem of Apple devices, But I mean, in a way, they're very similar, I mean, it's not like one is doing a much better job at
yeah,
monetizing for artists. I mean, there's some differences, but at the end of the day, it's negligible. I mean, it doesn't change. If you're an artist, whether you're getting ripped off by one or the other, you still cannot
right.
make a living by that. But I definitely believe it's we live in a transition thing where I think art is gonna somehow assign value somewhere else in the equation, and
Yeah.
I
But
think
I
there's a
think
lot
also
of
people are hating on Spotify. It's not like they're not trying to, they're trying to
yeah,
come
that's
up with
cool.
business
They're
models. It's
trying.
just that they have to survive as a company.
Yeah.
And if people are only willing to pay
Yeah,
minimum,
I mean that's the one thing. It's the market. I mean, it's like what the
yeah,
market is doing. I mean, I'm pretty sure Spotify would be much happier if they can charge more. So it's
yeah,
going to be in their best interest too, But yes, so it's ironic. Like now, the reason that in a way this became kind of my full time thing now. It's that this is something that still has to me a more legacy, old school type of value.
yeah,
It's very interesting. It's a product where I think the a customer it's much more open to give, let's say, $20 for an instruction note because it's a direct impact of them benefiting from something, right? And I always found it interesting how, like, I would work like for an entire year, writing music, arranging, recording, kind of spilling your entire blood, sweat, and tears into this is the culmination of an entire life worth of work into a record. And to me, that the ultimate value of an artist. And then it's so hard to convince people to spend money to buy that, which I think you're getting so much more in terms of essence than a simple exercise that it's so generic. It's maybe I find a different way to go around the exercise, but it's not something that has, I think, such a deep value and can touch in most of the things. But yet, the society assigns a much higher value to something like that because I think they can see a more direct impact to that. So it's a more physical business market model, I think. Still, but that, maybe that's going to change too because I can already see that with all the different technologies and AI that we have, and now all
yeah,
the tutoring things, and we can learn guitar from a modular AI app,
yeah,
and so what is the value of a human trying to
yeah,
teach you that?
yeah.
Okay.
But it's I don't know. I think it's pretty exciting to see what's happening. Yeah, I just want to ask you one more thing that I've really been bothering, not bothering me, but it's like the elephant in the room. It's your guitar there, because I
Oh
know
yeah,
that that's just an Italian
yeah.
luthier.
So this is Stefan Rafael Marchioni. So he's
Yeah,
Italian, but he's based in Texas,
in
in
Texas, right?
Houston, and he makes the Marchioni guitars. This is kind of one of his flagship models,
Yeah, that's the
which is
one that
called
Mike Marino plays,
yeah.
right?
It was designed for Mike Moreno
Okay.
back in the days. It's called a Burst 59 model. It's a semi-hollow. The interesting thing about this guitar is the neck. Because the neck feels just like an archtop neck. I mean,
Oh,
it's
really?
something
Okay.
slightly wider than
Yeah.
conventional stuff, which I love because I do a lot of voicing work, and I just love to have more clearance to really dig in the strings, And the profile of the neck it's amazing, but the body and also the one thing you can see that the neck is as thick as the guitar is as thick as the neck. So basically, the neck profile you pretty much I can go behind the neck here and on the heel, and I can put my thumb all the way to the body here, and I can play. I mean, absolutely normal. You can play a voicing on the completely last. You can definitely play all the way to the 22nd fret, not a problem with voicing. And then the guitar it's very comfortable as a modern instrument because it's very thin. So like you can see the side, it's super like you can see it the side of my finger. But the curvature of the top and of the back, it's much larger. So like if I measure the depth of the guitar from the tallest part of the front arc and the tallest back of the back arc, and the reflection, it's very glossy, you cannot see it.
Yeah, I
But
can.
the
Yeah,
guitar, I'll put my hand so you can kind of see it.
yeah, I can
The
see it.
guitar is like this thick right here.
Right.
So even in the middle is as thick as like a regular, I mean, like kind of a smaller, thinner type arch top. and so it has the most amazing sound. It feels
It
like an
sounds
electric
amazing and looks amazing. I really like the
on,
design.
on feel, but it does have like, especially for an more electric playing. I do like all the processing. Over the years I kind of got into the pedals and stuff, and I'm a sucker for like delays and reverbs and kind of
Yeah.
using them in modern ways to kind of get more of a, this kind of arrow. And obviously using a lot of the electronics with the conventional archtop, which I love. I'll show you some of the other guitars, which I have regular size ES175 type guitars. Then on a live setting, man, it's very hard to get away with that because in order to hear, you have to turn a little bit louder, and then it's feedback and picks, and it never enjoyable. But with this guitar, in a live, like especially in a quartet setting, man, it's really. I can do all the processing like an electric guitar, like a solid body,
Yeah.
but it feels like an archtop. It's like this.
Yeah.
This is like my baby. As I don't take it too much out on tour. This is like I'm my studio guy.
Yeah.
Obviously, being it's all handmade, so it's kind of one of a kind type thing. So I'm very always when you travel, how it is. Always like the low budget
Yeah, I
airlines
would be scared to travel with that guitar for sure.
in that, even though it comes in the most amazing carbon fiber case where literally indestructible, it can be on fire underwater, that's okay, but it's still it can get lost. But yeah, so this is my Marchione that Stefan made for me, and I have another a solid body Marchione, which is like a Strat,
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which was the one I recorded some of those
Yeah.
Intervalley Waves things
Oh,
for
that's
video.
also the same builder.
Yeah, it's the same builder, but that's his Strat version. So it's
Okay.
basically the neck feels just like you're playing an archtop, but you have all the kind of practical things of having a solid body guitar, and so you can really put all the gain you want. And so that's kind of my electric for like any kind of electric fusion type project. Or I also freelance. As musicians, we have to do 1,000 things. I play as a sideman in a lot of like, for some reason, Italian pop singers here in the States, like bands, kind of like completely modern pop opera type stuff. Kind of like Andrea Bocelli type stuff. So it's all electric, pop instrumentation stuff. So that's my kind of guitar. And then let me just show you this. I'll just have to mute this really quickly. Let me show this. So I also, my workhorse guitars, let me just leave this here, it's a Japanese make. I don't know if you're familiar with Westville guitars.
Doesn't Kurt Rosenwinkel play those?
Yes, Kurt, they make obviously Kurt plays lately anything he wants, but they make the official signature Kurt Rosenwinkel
Yeah,
models.
yeah.
It's a company called Westville. The logo is on the back though. Being Japanese, they're very they don't want to kind of show off. It's kind of a thing of pride. You want to be modest and not put the logo in front. So it's Westville Guitars. They're in Tokyo. Amazing company. I mean, I think for the money, this is, in my opinion, one of the best guitars because they're completely handmade and
It looks amazing.
like the appointments, but they're in the price of like Eastman or something like that. Like
Really?
it's only direct. You cannot buy them in stores. You have to buy them through Westville,
Right,
through their
right.
website. But basically, this actually guitar, it's called the Unity, and this was designed with Pat Metheny. So
It
Pat,
looks like the Pat Metheny guitar, yeah.
yes, like now Ibanez makes, which is kind of funny because the owner of Westville, Masaki Nishimura, nicest guy in the world, we kind of laugh with him because I remember because of these trips to Japan over the years, I became friends with this guy who owns the best guitar store in Tokyo. So every Western guitar player who goes to Japan, that's the first place they take them. It's called Walk-in Shibuya. It's a 4-floor high guitar store, and each floor is a different showroom. So like the top floor is all the vintage, like one of a kind, old Gibsons and L4s and L5s, and I mean like complete all kinds of other collectible things. Then the third floor, it's all the modern type archtops, like from Sadowski, from a lot of the different European makers they have there. And then on the second floor, it's his own company, Westville. That's a showroom. So that's where he has all the Westvilles. And he also has another brand called Archtop Tribute, AT. And that is a brand that replicates famous vintage guitars. So like they would make a modern version, a cheaper version of an L5 should sound like or look like and stuff, and people dig those. But Westview is the main brand, and so what Pat Metheny a few years ago, like back in 2000 and probably 15, on one of his tours in Japan, they took him to Westview, and so he tried a few guitars. He bought one right there just to play. He really liked them. And then they started talking to the owner, saying, "Well, would you like to make me a guitar if I can specify a few things?" So they started working on this guy. This is when Pat Metheny was playing that Dutch Daniel Slayman or Salaman. I don't know how to pronounce. For a lot of years, he was playing a Dutch. I think it's a guy from Amsterdam. I think he's based that makes the best replicas of L5s. And so this was like circuit. Like any picture you see of Pat Metheny from 20, maybe 15 until last year. He was playing this guitar. It had a Charlie Christian pickup.
Yeah, well, I have the latest one right there.
Oh yeah, so this is so anyways, the Dutch guitar looked just like that. Ibanez made it identical. I mean, literally, if you look at the other guitar, you cannot tell a difference. So then finally, Ibanez got to his case because he was playing that guitar, the Dutch one, and he could get away with it because under his contract with Ibanez, as long as he doesn't play a mass available like instrument, so something that people can buy, then it's okay. And that is a completely the other
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
There's no way a person can buy it. I mean, it's very expensive. It's special order, 5 years for that kind of stuff. So there's no problem in marketing. But then when Westview made this one, that's when they get in trouble. Because suddenly it's a Japanese company that's going to make something that's still going to be limited. They're only going to make 20 or 30 per year. But it's still, first of all, it looks, as you can tell, very similar.
Yeah.
Other stuff.
But at the same time, not. But
it's so basically it's this is like kind of a 175. Metheny kind of worked with them. I did change a few of the things from the original because the knobs are inlaid with the little signs from Imaginary Day, the Pat Metheny record. You know how that had the secret alphabet. So the V for volume and the T for tone used to be these little signs. Like the T was the crossroad sign, railroad crossroad, and the V was the Empire State Building. And so they were inlaid. And I still have the original note somewhere. And then this thing here was if you buy an original Unity, it's the off-ramp arrow. So the truss rod cover, it's in wood. It's exactly the cover of off-ramp. And then the pickup, this is still the pickup. The pickup has these little arrows on the side. And this is from his latest, well, not the latest, but a few years ago, he put that record, King. And it had the little arrows as part of the logo. So, but this, Metheny has serial number 1 and 2, and this is serial number 3.
Oh, really? Wow.
I became good friends with Masaki, so when he was going to do that, and Metheny gave the okay to sell it also as they had to call it tribute, Pat Metheny tribute record motto, because they could no longer, with Ibanez said they cannot put official on anything like that. And so I was like, man, save one for me, I'm going to buy it because biggest Metheny fans. I love this guitar. I mean, it's definitely probably something very similar to what you have. It's in terms of, Metheny designed it that way with the wood selection and kind of how he wanted it. And then Ibanez came that same year, at the end of the year, they came out with the model we have. In that, so this is kind of my for solo guitar. If I was like to take a solo gig or something, this is the one. Definitely kind of nice acoustic. Sound and plugged in that pickup, kind of Charlie Christian pickup. It's pretty cool. It has a very acoustic, super nice. Nice sound.
Very acoustic. Yeah.
And then I have one more. I'll show you of these guys. So before I met with Marchione, my two main guitars was this one for the more acoustic stuff, and then let me just get this out of the case. And I have another which is a kind of similar to Kurt Rosenwinkel's model, but it's completely hollow. His is semi hollow. So this is something they call the Solar, Westview Solar, and it's it's kind of like definitely exactly the body style is the same as the Kurt Rosenwinkel, one of his models, but it's completely fully hollow. There's no block inside, so it's a thin line, fully hollow arched up, super beautiful guitar. This is like definitely this has been in most airplanes than all my guitars.
So sorry, what's the name of the actual brand? Like, what's the name of
the brand is Westview, like a West.
Oh, so it's the Westview. Okay.
Yeah, so this is also Westview.
Okay.
And this. If you look at the Kurt Rosenwinkel model, visually they look exactly the same.
They look like that, yeah.
Yeah, except it's a semi-hollow, so there's a block. This one is completely fully hollow. but it's
Oh,
exactly the same sizes. And then on this one, I changed the pickups because Westview works with Kent Armstrong, so they always ship Kent Armstrong pickups that he specifically wires. Once I got the Marchioni, Marchioni works with DiMarzio makes a special Marchioni pickup. That's one for him, but he also works with this company called Tone Specific. And Tone Specific, it's like this old guy in the East Coast who just wants those pickups. But to me, like lately, they're my favorite pickups. And my Marchioni has Tone Specifics, both of the Marchionis. And so I wanted to put Tone Specifics in this one. So I changed the pickups on this guy with Tone Specifics. And then I also run on this one because I take it some of my local restaurant gigs and things. I have a little piezo sticker here.
interesting.
It's a little pickup. This is like the coolest thing. It's the cheapest pickup. It's $9 on Amazon. It comes with, you see, this little rubbery thing with the jack, so it goes to your strap thing. And then you can just plug your quarter inch here.
What's the name of the
Man, I
product?
can look and email you back. I forgot the name. It's what literally was
Okay.
like the cheapest Chinese. They even sell them at packs of 5 or something. But one thing I discovered, Miko, is that when I plug this into like my amp, like I use with a tube amp, like a low wattage Fender type deluxe type thing, I mean the magnetic sound, it's amazing. That's totally the modern sound, super nice. But if it's just the guitar by itself, if I'm playing a solo gig or like maybe a duet, just guitar and bass, I always miss the ambience, like the sound
Yeah.
of like a mic, something that just warms it up and makes it as if the mix is slightly wider. There's more
Yeah.
crackles and sound and things. And obviously carrying a nice mic around and stuff is just too much of a hassle for these things. And these little piezos, especially if I found putting it in this area of the neck, I run it, now I use a little AER, the German amps, AER, compact
Yeah,
60,
yeah, yeah.
like little acoustic. So I run my channel one is my magnetic pickup through a few little pedals, like a little boost and like some delays and reverb. And then channel 2, I just plug this guy and just give it a little bit of reverb and take some of the highs off, just throw on the EQ. And that's like maybe 15 to 20% in the mix only. But you
Interesting.
get the coolest attack of the sound.
Yeah, I find that people are experimenting with this stuff more and more because we want to get the acoustic sound out of the
Yeah,
electric guitar.
exactly.
I was talking to somebody about that too, like the Tim Miller does that. I think he's got
Yeah,
some
a lot of
piezo.
guys, but especially if you're playing exposed, right? I mean, if you're playing in a band and the moment the drummer hits a cymbal, man, it's
Yeah.
gone. Any
Yeah.
nuance of it, it's you can not hear it. So what's the point? But I found that a lot of times, you would suspect if you have a very high fidelity microphone or something, it does, completely amplifies the color of the instrument, doesn't change anything. That's something that you want. But there's a weird situation in which coloring or completely taking away or like not being linear, but maybe like attenuating or accentuating one of the frequencies, like what a tube amplifier does. It's not a linear thing. So certain things get color, but that's part of the instrument, right? So like certain combination of guitar and amp, even though the amp, if you think of an amp, it's not a very good amp because it's coloring, it's not a flat response. But
Hmm.
that coloring might be actually a very desired tonal effect. It,
Yeah.
it gets you to a different thing. I find out with these cheap piezos that they're not good at all. They completely distort the actual wave, but they actually end up distorting certain frequencies in a very good direction. So it's like the natural guitar might not have that boost in a certain frequency, but because this is not a very good piezo, that might boost that frequency or attenuate it where it's very pleasant to the ear. So I found like, man, this is kind of cool. I experimented with a few different options, and the cheapest one was like, man,
Yeah,
that's
because
all.
those mics that you put, I see people put on,
Yeah, a lot of, and those can be
they're
like the
really very
DPA.
expensive. The
Yeah, they can be
AK.
like the Dutch. There's a Dutch company from Denmark that does I think the DPA they're called.
Yeah, yeah.
They're reference mics. I mean, like super expensive and
And you can drop
material
them
gets.
easily and break
Yeah,
them.
exactly. And also like I'm one of those guys who like I need this like maybe a few times every few months. Like it's not
Hmm.
like this is my main sound I'm recording with it. Because if I go to the studio, if I record here, I have nice microphones. So I just put a
Exactly.
nice
Yeah.
18G. So, but like for live applications, this kind of lives on the guitar. And sorry, I think I get a